So I've been thinking about a couple behaviors that are white behaviors, at least in more predominantly poor, lineage poor, as I call myself. Um, there are a couple behaviors that I've been thinking about, and that we do, that I did, that don't help us out. One of them is being unwilling to accept that something is or was bad. There is a lot of different iterations of just being unwilling to accept, acknowledge, absorb that something happened. It changed you. It changed what your life is. And do you see how you can't move on? And then you moved on. Like, you don't get to that point if you stay afraid and locked up against the thing that you won't fully acknowledge as bad. That can be something like, I worked with someone who had survived breast cancer, and she had lost a breast through that, and um, and obviously that was and always will be a very sensitive and triggering subject for her. But the level of anxiety and how jarring it was for her when she knew that she was having one of her, like, once a year or once every 3 years kind of checkups to make sure that the cancer hasn't returned. Um, that's legitimate, obviously, to be anxious about that. But the level to which it was jarring kind of, I don't know, in my experience, that means that you never fully accepted that the thing happened. And you can't move through it, move on, until you have accepted it. And so, I see a lot of iterations of, and I've done it lots of times in lots of different ways, that you create a place of cognitive dissonance in your life because you treat something bad as, okay, well, it's over now, and I'm just gonna push that over in the corner, and as long as it doesn't cause any problems, and as long as I leave it alone. I think it always comes down to, we have a sense of leave it alone, and but the thing is, like, you gotta face some shit, right? um and that can also be something as still a personal response, even if it's a systemic wiring. But that can also be the unwillingness to realize that you're white in a country that has a lot of history um, about racial differences and discrimination, and differences as far as how people have been legally afforded humanity or not. Um, because you hear people who just want to end the discussion about racism, and they just kind of want everyone to, like, shut up and not make a big deal about it. And it's like, that's not how problems get solved. um but it's still that kind of unwillingness, because it is hard. I did it. It is hard. You have to realize what you look like walking into a room to a person of color in this country. And there's a lot of things about that you have to accept. I'm not going to go into it right now. Um, but, like, you have to walk through it, and you have to, take some inventory and get some lived experience, and see what you can improve on, and as far as like how you show up. And it takes work. Everything in life takes work. But to just, refuse to accept reality, in that sense of if you leave it alone, it'll go away. That's such a like scarcity poverty mindset, isn't it? Because we're used to having to do that, specifically, especially with medical care. And then the other thing, sorry, I need to rub my eye. And there's a cat on one arm, so one arm is immobile. The other thing that I was thinking about, and that I struggle a lot with myself, but I saw echoed a lot, especially I was watching some documentaries about homelessness, and there were so many sentiments that I've like isolated in myself as just like hard-grained beliefs about the world or about my place in it. And I realized like, oh, that's white country poor. And there's so much of me, like I had no idea until this last year when I started kind of like, accepting where I came from, that's who I am. But a sentiment that we get into is, and this is just so logically understandable if you have any empathy to the situation, regardless of like where it's taking place, because I've seen this sentiment, and it's a logical sentiment. I've seen that show up different countries, different ethnicities, but it's I'm not looking for a handout. I'm not looking for charity. I don't want your help. I want to be allowed the opportunities, or allowed to walk into the place, or allowed to even be considered getting hired for the job where I know that I could. I know that I could show up. If I could get in, I know that I could show up, and that I could be able to meet all my needs in a more graceful manner than I have been, right? That's honestly where I am right now. That's a sentiment that I've struggled with all my life, or off and on. But that was something that's echoed a lot in if you look at that, especially white people, because it's a very exact thing that pops up over and over with white people in the U.S. that are systemically poor. But the whole like, I'm not looking for a fucking handout, I'm not looking for you to do it for me. I want to be able to do it, and I'm not allowed to do it. Again, that's a very logical thing that you can be empathetic to. But so I was thinking, like, why do so many of us land up here? Because it does have to be part of a thought process, because that sentiment always follows no one owes you a damn thing. And as a white person, you have to have a really honest relationship with what your privilege is, and understand the situations where you do have privilege, or have had privilege. That doesn't mean that I've had to take out a loan for every dental emergency, but like, I still recognize my privilege in a lot of different parts of my life where I have it, right? Because I'm white in the U.S. But a recent thought that I had along those lines, along that sentiment, was like, because I was thinking, where's the next step? Where do you go from there? That's clearly not a place you can stay, because it's not sustainable, right? And it's not what it's all about as far as solutions. And I realized I think the next step is just like understanding where you're at when you have that thought and that mentality, is you are completely shunning horizontal movement, right? Horizontal hierarchy and structuring and value systems, and what everything tends to benefit from, and what is the most common order of things in the natural world is a horizontal. Sorry, I meant vertical. All the times I just say horizontal, I meant vertical. I'm sorry. It's because I'm laying down. But you get to a point where you understand that horizontal movement is so much more important than vertical hierarchy and structuring. You see that in literally every ecosystem, and every social system is an ecosystem, a multi-layered, overlapping in different places ecosystem of human stuff. But I think that has to be the next step when you're at that place of I acknowledge that they've gone past the point of if I ignore it, because they can't ignore it anymore. You can't ignore being homeless, right? And so then you have to accept what's been done to you and what kind of situation you're in, and realize that no one owes you anything. And yeah, you do just want to be able to, like, let me fucking do my fucking thing and I'd be fine. But sometimes, life lands you in a hole. And I think the next step is to be investigating opportunities for horizontal movement out of that place. Because with horizontal movement, you recognize that it's an interchange, that it's symbiotic, it's mutual aid, right? Rather than a power structure that comes from a vertical system.